Can you make it louder?
Yes, we are on Daf. Samach Dalet Omud Sheni. Today's Daf is Daf Samach Hey, and we'll begin on Daf Samach Dalet Omud Sheni, about 4 lines from the bottom. Tanan. Let us just review. I just quoted the Mishnah. We had a fantastic machlokus yesterday, and that is what happens. You made the goyrel. You have 2 goats in front of you. One of them died. One of those goats died. Let's say the shame, or the one that's going to the Azazel. One of them died. So the Mishnah says you bring another pair of goats, make a new goyrel, and you say that if the shame died, if the one that was shame, then the new goyrel, the new lottery, should take its place. If the Azazel died, then the one that came onto the Azazel should take the place of the Azazel that died. That is clear. So now you have a replacement, but you're going to have an extra copy of the one that did not die. For example, if the Azazel died, by you making a new lottery, you're going to have 2 goats that have potentially the name Shem on it. That's going to be which one do you bring? So the Mishnah is ambiguous. The Mishnah says V'hasheni yira achi sto'ev. The second one, you let it pasture, and you bring the other one. But it doesn't say you let it graze until it gets a mum, and then you mocher yiplu skip this word, lindava, she'ein chatas tiber mesa. So the Mishnah says, one of them, you let it graze, get a mum, and then they sell it, and the money goes for karbonos. But you don't kill it, because it's a chatas tzibur. This is one of these are carbon chatas being brought on behalf of the tzibur that's never killed. It's never killed if you have if it's not necessary, if you have an extra one. So you just sell it. But which one do you bring? So Rav said, this is very important. Rav said you bring the first one, and not the second one. So the first one, you just get a replacement for the animal that died. You bring the first one as the carbon, and the second one, that's the one that goes out to graze. That's what Rav said. And the expression that Rav used, it has like a moral connotation. Balachayim are not nitcha. A live animal can never be expelled. It's only suspended temporarily that you couldn't use it. You had to find a replacement for its partner that died. But once you found that replacement by doing a new gyro, new lottery, then it becomes reusable again. And therefore, you actually bring the original one as a carbon. And the second one, that is let out to graze because it's a double. You don't need it anymore. Then we came across Rabbi Yehuda. And that was the opinion of Rav. And so let's read the Mishnah according to Rav. Rabbi Yehuda said that you kill the animal. They kill the animal. The extra one is being killed. And then Rabbi Yehuda said, Rabbi Yehuda said another din, which is Rabbi Yehuda is going to say that let's say the Kohen Gadol's in the Kodesh Kedoshim and the blood spilled over, then the live animal, the shtaleach, you kill it. You can never use it again. So Mesa Mishtaleach, if the live animal died, you shafech hadam, you spill the blood. In other words, once something becomes unusable anymore, Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that it's expelled. That's called balichayim nitchen. So the way Rav learned the Mishnah is that Rabbi Yehuda actually holds balichayim are pushed away. Once it becomes suspended, it becomes expelled. You can never use it anymore. So it's a double machloikus between Rabbi Yehuda. First of all, what do you do with the extra one? Rabbi Yehuda says you kill it. And the second one is that Rabbi Yehuda says that you always use the new one. You never use the original one, because once it became suspended, it becomes expelled. You can never use the animal, the surviving animal. That's the way Rabbi Yehuda, that's Rav learned the Mishnah. Rabbi Yochanan learned the Mishnah. He learned the Mishnah that everybody holds. You use the second animal, all the animals from the second group, and the first one gets killed. The first one either goes out to graze or gets killed. Everybody agrees, balechayim nitchen. And this Vesheni, even the Tanakama would agree to that. And that's what Rabbi Yochanan learned. Okay. Comes the Mishnah. So we are starting from Samach Dalet Amud Beis Tanan. To now we learned in the Mishnah. Our Mishnah said that the reason why the extra animal, after you make the new lottery, now you have a double of one animal, right? It's the one that survived, plus you made a lottery of a two animals, so you have two of the same. Let's say you have two goats that won the lottery to be called Shem. One goat is brought, the first one, and the second one, let's say the second one is laid out to graze. She'ein chatas tzibur mesa. The chatas that was once belonging to the tzibur never put to death. So the Gemara asks, but if this was not a chatas belonging to a group of people, from the Mishnah you could say that if it belonged to one person, kihai gavna, if you have a double, right, mesa, you would kill it. So that would make sense. So the Gemara says a question. Bishlam Rabbi Yochanan, according to this makes sense according to Rabbi Yochanan, Rab Abba Amarav, because Rabbi Yochanan will go with the opinion of Rab Abba, who said in the name of Rav. The Amar Rab Abba Amarav, Rab Abba said in the name of Rav, Hakoil Moidim She'im Nischaper B'She'ein Avuda Mesa. So that if you were brought a kapara with the one that was never lost in the beginning, Avuda Mesa, the one that was lost is dies. In other words, we know, let's say a guy, the Gemara talks about a machlokes between Rebbe and Rabbanan. They have an argument that if someone has a chatas, he had a chatas and then he lost it. And he separated out another one to take his place. And he found the first one. And now you have a choice between the two of them. So Rebbe says you take one of them and the other one is put to death. The Chachamim say, no, ein chatas that add a kapara dies. Only if you don't kill a karban chatas. When is the case of a chatas you would kill, a double chatas, is if you already brought your karban chatas and then you found the one that was lost, then, only then you would kill the previous animal. But if it was lost temporarily, you separated another animal, and now you found the first one, now you have two of them that are alive. So there, it was a machlokes between Rebbe and the Rabbanan. What to do in that case? So the Rab Chamim say that so comes along Rab Abba in the name of Rab and says the argument is only if you took the first one, the original one, and brought your kapara, and the second one is still around. That is the argument. Rebbe holds that the second one, even though it was never lost, that animal gets killed because it has a din like the first animal, and therefore that animal would get killed, even though that animal was never lost. It was temporarily brought as a replacement. You thought the original animal was lost. You got a replacement. Then you found the original animal and used the original animal. Then Rebbe holds that even if you use the original animal, the second animal gets put to death. And Rabbanim say, no, you let it stick around. Okay? So according to our Gemara, this makes sense. According to Rabbi Yochanan, that says that you always use the second group and the first one stays around. That's why we say that in the case if it was a tzibor animal, you let it out to pasture. But because if it was a yachid animal, you would put it to death because you were nischaper with the second animal. The first animal is called, like the lost animal, and therefore everybody would agree that the first animal gets put to death. But according to the Rav, who said that you're always using the first animal. So what's left? The second animal. The second animal, wait a second. In such a case, why would you put that second animal to death if it was a carbon if it was a chatos yachid? The havale kemafresh shtei chatois la'achrois. It's like somebody who, for insurance reasons, at one time separates two carbon chatas. A guy who's nervous, he says, you know what, I have to bring a carbon chatas. I'm going to separate two of them. And I'll decide later on which one I'm going to use. Mischape ba'achas mehem, you could use one of them. Bahashniya tira, and the second one, you could let it out to graze. So therefore, according to this, Rav, the way the Gemara asks this question is pretty straightforward. Rav said, which animal are you going to use? You're going to use the first animal. Which animal is extra? It's the second animal. Well, if the second animal, the Mishnah says that if the fact that it's a carbon tzibur, that's why you let it out to graze. But if it was a carbon yachid, you would have actually killed it. But why? According to Rav, why would you have killed it? That second animal was never a lost animal. In other words, at one time, you had the ability, a choice to bring the first or the second, and therefore only an animal that's lost, that's called a chatos mesus. That's when you kill an animal. But if it was never a lost animal, you should never kill it. So in other words, why does the Mishnah imply that had this been a carbon chatos yachid, you would have killed it? So the Gemara says, Kevin the Omar Rava, since Rava said, Rav Savala ka Rabbi Yossi, Rav holds like Rabbi Yossi, the Omar Mitzvah Barisha, that you automatically, by default, have to use the first animal, the remaining, the one that survived from the first group, right? So therefore, when you brought the second group, made the Hagrola, it was just an exercise, but you never had any intention to use it. So automatically, from the very beginning, it's considered a lost animal. Lost animal is put to death. And therefore, even if that's why in our Mishnah, Rav would say that the second animal gets put to death, even though it was never an animal that was lost or was something that had a problem with it. But the fact is, when you made that lottery, you had never any intention to use it. So it's only because it's a chatas tzibur, you get away with it, that you could still set it to graze and sell it and use the money. But had it been a chatas yachid, then you actually would have to kill it. So that's the ends that little complicated piece of Gemara. Tanan. So our Mishnah, by the way, is more readable according to Rav, and not so readable according to Rabbi Yochanan. So, but the Gemara starts first saying that it seems simple according to Rabbi Yochanan. Now we learned in our Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda said, Tamus, you kill the animal. The extra animal gets killed. Now, according to Rabbi Yochanan, the Chachamim says that you use the second group, and the first group you let to graze. The remaining animal of the first group, you let it to graze. And Rabbi Yehuda said, you kill it. So Gemara says, Bishlam Rabbi Yochanan, according to Rabbi Yochanan, the Amar, that who said, in the Chachamim said, Sheni Shebezug Rishon Yira. The second one, the surviving one, in the first group, you let that go to pasture because you're only using the second group. On this, Rabbi Yehuda says, Yamus, you kill that remaining first animal from the first group. And mischaper b'sheni shebezug sheni, and you'll use the second group. You'll use the second animal of the second group because you only totally use the second group. So that the Mishnah has some sensibility if you read it according to Rabbi Yochanan. Elul Rav, but if you read the Mishnah according to Rav, the Amar, that the Chachamim said sheni shebezug sheni yira. The Chachamim agree that you use the first animal, the surviving animal, from the first group. And which one is the extra one? The second from the second group is the yira, is let to pasture. And Rabbi Yehuda says, Yamus, you kill that second group. So then, according to Rabbi Yehuda, what are you going to use for your carbon? You're going to use the remaining one. Rabbi Yehuda, Ma'amid Kaper, what are you going to use for your Sa'il Hashem? The remaining one from the first group. Misaver Rabbi Yehuda, Asheni Shebishuk Sheni Koi. Does Rabbi Yehuda? Can Rabbi Yehuda? No, I'm sorry. This answers the teretz. Bama mekaper. What are you going to get a kapara? Because according to Rabbi Yehuda, we established later on in the Mishnah that Rabbi Yehuda for sure holds balei chayim nitchen. You can never use the first one. You automatically have to use the second one. And if you're killing the second group, You're not using the first one because it's Balachayim Nitkin. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, where are you going to have a Soyel Hashem? So the Gemara says, you're reading the Mishnah wrong. Misavet, do you think Rabbi Yehuda Sheni Shebusuk Sheni Koi, that Rabbi Yehuda said you kill the second one from the second group? Rabbi Yehuda Sheni Shebusuk Rishon Koi. Rabbi Yehuda said you kill the remaining one from the first group, and you only use the second group. And that is the double machlokes. According to Rab, there's two machlokes in the Mishnah. One machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim concerns himself regarding a chatois tzibur. A chatois tzibur that's extra, do you yira? Do you let it graze and you can still use the money? Or do you kill it? Rabbi Yehuda says you kill it. The Chachamim say yira. But then there's another machlokes, and this is the way Rav learns the Mishnah. The Chachamim hold that you use the first one from the first group, and Rabbi Yehuda says the first one from the first group is nitcha. It's expelled. You can never use it. Since it was suspended, it's expelled, and you only use the second from the second group. That's how the way Rav learns the Mishnah. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda said you kill the first one from the first group, and you only use the second one. The Ika, the Kamois of Hachi, and others ask it as a question. V'oid Amar Rabbi Yehuda. The Mishnah says Rabbi Yehuda said one thing more to the Chachamim. Nishbach hadam, if the blood was spilled. In other words, if the Kohen Gadol was in the Kodesh Kodashim and the goat's blood was spilled, Yomus HaMishtaleach. Right away you kill the Mishtaleach, the other animal. Meis HaMishtaleach. If the goat that was supposed to be thrown off the Azazel dies, Yishafech hadam, you spill the blood. So the Gemara says, so what is this va'oid? Rabbi Yehuda is adding. Bishlam Rav, according to Rav, Reisha pligi b'chatas tzibur. The first argument they're having is concerning gechatas tzibur, whether you said yira or yamas. Do you let it graze or let it pasture? The Seifa and the second part of the Mishnah teaches you they're arguing balei chayim, where an animal is suspended. Is it suspended or expelled? According to Chachamim, it's just suspended, and you fix the problem. You could reuse the first group. According to Rabbi Yehuda, no. Once it's suspended, it's forever no more in use. You always have to use the second group, and the first one you kill. Rabbi Yochanan, according to Rabbi Yochanan, my va'oid. What is Rabbi Yehuda teaching you with this va'oid? The Chachamim technically would agree that balei chayim nitchen. And Rabbi Yehuda is saying balei chayim nitchin, that you kill the mishtaleach right away, you can never use it. According to Rabbi Yochanan, that is the same viewpoint as the Chachamim. So what is this word va'oid in the Mishnah? Kasha, this remains a difficulty. So just to review, and what you need to take away from this is a very important machlokes, is that if an animal that at one time was a usable kosher animal, like one of the goats, and then its partner died, so now, for a short period of time, it becomes unusable. Rav says that when you fix the problem, and this is what the Mishnah would hold, you should use the first group of animals, the first animal that became reusable again. And the way to remember that is v'salachta lavoinenu kiravhu. God forgives you, kiravhu, because we paskin like Rav, that a balei chayim that just slipped off the derech and then comes back on, you could reuse them again. That's a way to remember it. Rabbi Yochanan holds, no, once the animal, this kosher carbon, lost this one goat lost its partner, the surviving goat can never be used. And according to the Mishnah, Tanakama says you could let it to graze and use the money. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, you have to kill it. Next, Gemara. V'oid Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda said another thing. Nishbach hadam yomus hamishtaleh. Again, Rabbi Yehuda said that if the Kohen Gadol was in the Kodesh Kodashim and the blood spilled on the floor, then you go out and you just kill the mishtaleach right then and there, because you don't do a new gairol and then you reuse it again. Balei chayim nitchem. Rabbi Yehuda for certainly holds, even according to Rav, that you kill it and it's never usable again. So the Gemara says, Bishlam and nishbach hadam yosh mishtaleach. If the blood spilled out, then you kill the mishtaleach. You didn't do the mitzvah spraying the blood in the Kodesh Kodashim, and therefore the whole girdle becomes nullified, and both the animals, of course, are no good, and therefore you kill the mishtaleach. Ella meis hamishhtaleach, but what happens if the mishtaleach died? Amay yishafech adam. Why should you spill the blood? Ha if avid le mitzvase. The mitzvah that was supposed to be done with the mishtaleach was done already. Because what do you have to do with the mishtaleach? There's no great service to be done. All you do is do a goyrel, call it the azazel. You don't really even have to say a vidoy. You should say a vidoy, but if you didn't, it's still good. And therefore, the other part of the service, sending it out, that's not a service. So the mitzvah was done already. So if the mitzvah was done, so it's still, there's no reason why you should spill the blood you should pour out the blood of the sa'ir that was the Shem Hashem that you're about to sprinkle in the Kodesh Kodashim. It didn't really lose its partner before the mitzvah. Actually, the mitzvah was done already with the mishtaleach. The answer is no, the mitzvah was not really completed. And therefore, why? Amrei debei Rabbi Yanai Omakra, the pasuk says, Yo'omad chai lifnei Hashem lechaper, that the Soil Azazel has a mitzvah to stay alive in the Beis Hamikdash while you're doing the kapara of the So'ir Bifnim. The Vidarshan ad Basayeh Zakot Lias Chai. How long does the So'ir HaMishtaleach has to stay alive? Achas Matan Domin Shel Chavere, until the giving of the blood of his friend, until the sprinkling of the blood of the other So'ir in the Kodesh Kodashim. The other Mishtaleach needs to stay alive. And if it died, then it means it died before the mitzvah was completed. If it dies before the mitzvah was completed, you have to throw everything out and restart again with a brand new girl. New Mishnah. Tanan Hasam, the Gemara says, the Mishnah says, Bnei Ha'ir, let's say you have a city in Israel. Sheshalchu eshikleim. They sent their new shkalim to buy the karbanos in the hands of the collector. Okay, there was a special collector from the Beis Hamikdash, a representative. He went to the city, collected all their half shekels, and he's on his way back to the Beis Hamikdash. V'nigdavu oisha'avdu, got lost or stolen. Now, really, this collector is only a shomer chinam. So, lost or stolen, he's really potter from paying, making up the loss, but he has to swear. So, to who does he swear? Im nitrumu truma. If in the Beis Hamikdash they already separated shkalim, it means they said they're purchasing new animals with the money that they already collected from elsewhere on behalf of those money that was not yet brought yet to the Beis Hamikdash that are in transit. So really, when the Gabbai collected the money from this city, it's as if it already came into the hands of Beis Hamikdash. So the people don't have to give a new shekel, but nishboyin lagizbarim. But Hegdish doesn't want to lose out, so the collector has to swear to the caretakers of the Beis Hamikdash that it was indeed lost or stolen, and this loss of shkalim is the loss of the Beis Hamikdash. V'imlav, but let's say no animal was brought on behalf of the people of this city, so they're waiting till their money enters the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, the people are still responsible for making sure that their shekels reach the Beis Hamikdash. And if it was stolen in transit, so then the Shoyman Nishpoil of Bnei Ha'ir, he swears to the people of the city that it was indeed stolen from him. Uvnei Ha'ir Sheiklin Achreim Tachtem, and the people of the city have to replace it by making a new shekel. This is the point of this Mishnah. But Nimtzu, let's say they found the money that was stolen. In other words, the shliach, they caught the robbers, and he returned the original shekels. Or it was found, it was lost, and you found it. The thieves returned the money. Now you have two sets of shkolim. Elu ve'elim shkolim hey. These are shekels that are used for the Beis Hamikdash. The Beis Hamikdash gains. But they can never use it for next year. I mean, next year, that city has to re-give a new shekel for the following year. So they gave twice for this particular year. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, next year they're exempt. This that they gave twice this year, their monies will be used for the following years. My time in Rabbi Yehuda. What's the reason of Rabbi Yehuda? Amar Rava says, Kasava Rabbi Yehuda, Choyves Shel Shana Zu, Karevis L'Shana Haba. Obligations of this year can be brought into the next year. So can be brought into the next year. So therefore, the people do not, according to Rabbi Yehuda, have to re-give their shkalim again. They were yotze by giving twice this year. That's what he says. So now let's read what Abaya has a question. Abaya is fe Abaya. Abaya has a question. Par v'so'ir shayom haKippurim, the goat and the cow of Yom Kippur. Okay, you have the goat and the cow, the Kohen Gadol Yom Kippur. Everything's all set, and all of a sudden a vanishing act happened. Sha'avdu, it got lost somewhere. They looked around the base of Migdash. They don't see the goat or the cow that was designated for the service. The hifrish achreim tachteim. So they right away got a replacement. By the Sirei Avodah Zarah, if Gans Klal Yisrael did Avodah Zarah, they bring a goat for to be mechaper. Again, if they lost it, and then they separated another one until it's take its place, and then they found the original one. They found the original one after the service of Yom Kippur was done. They found the original one. Kulan Yamusu, you put them to death. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Now, right away, you could ask a question. Why don't you save this par of Asoy Yom Kippurim till next year? Because what did Rabbi Yehuda says? That if you don't need it this year, you could use the shekels for next year. So why did you say that a par and Asoy Yom Kippurim that was lost, and you brought a replacement for them? So when you find the original one, why do you put them to death? This is the question. Kulim Yamusu, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you should be able to use the par and sorry for next year. Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Lazar, Shimon says, Yiru Achi Stavo. Rabbi Lazar, Shimon says, you let it out to graze until it gets a blemish. He's just more lenient. He says you don't have to kill the original animals. You could just let them to graze, let them get a blemish, and then sell it and use the money for karbonos nedava. But again, the question is, why does Rabbi Yehuda say you kill the original animals? Why don't you save it for next year? Amalei. So this was the question of Abaya. Who did he ask this question to? It's not clear. But Amalei, so the yeshiva answered Abaya. We go to Amud Beis. The reason why this was already, let's say the par v'sori for Tashim Pei Aleph. And so your question is, save it for Tashim Pei Beis. Karbanas Tzibur Ka'amrid. Actual animals, that's what your question is, that you should save it for next year. Shanu Karbanas Tzibur, animals that were designated as Karbanas Tzibur can never be used for the following year. Maybe money, yes, but not animals. The pasuk says, it says this is the carbon oila in its new year, in its newness, in the new month. Amra Torah, the Torah says, carbon mitruma chadasha. The purchase of the karbonis tzibur has to be from new monies. So therefore, this carbon, this par v'sor shema kippurim, which was bought with the monies of Tafshin Pei Aleph, when it comes to Tafshin Pei Beis, you can't use that animal anymore because that was purchased from Tafshin Pei Aleph's money, not from Tafshin Pei Beis money. And therefore, the Torah says only bring karbonis tzibur from something that was purchased from the new monies. So the Gemara says, okay, your answer is very good. Ha tinach sa'ir. That makes sense. What you're saying, if it was a goat, the goat actually was public carbon tzibur, right? The goat that was being mechaper on behalf of Klal Yisrael. Par, but the cow, my ikalamemra. The cow was not a public carbon. It actually was purchased from the personal Kohen Gadol's pocket. So it was a carbon yachid. So that does not have to be from the new monies. It's never bought from any monies. So again, why did they kill those animals that from last year's? You could technically use them for the following year. So the sa'ir, I understand you kill it, but why the par? So the Gemara says par gzera par atu sa'ir. We kill the par because maybe you'll come to use the sa'ir next year. Therefore, in order not to use the sa'ir next year because it's possible, so then we don't use the par, we kill the par as well. So the Gemara says, the Gemara has animal rights. Ubishum gzeira yamusu. Because of a gzeira, you're going to kill a nice cow. V'oid had Rab Tavi Amar Rabbi Yishia gufa mitzvahi. Really, what Rabbi Yishia is only lechatchila digedin to use it to purchase karbanos tzibur from new money. But the evet, it's kosher even if you use last year's money. The Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel karbanos tzibur that you're buying right now, haboyim be'echad b'nissen, that's purchased in the first day of Nisan, mitzvah lahavim nechadish. You should use the newly collected money starting from Rosh Chodesh Nisan. But if you purchased it karbanos from last year's old money, yatsa, yotzer, ela shechisa mitzvah, but you didn't do the mitzvah correctly. It's not a b'di'evet. It's not a b'di'evet. It's possible. Only lechatchila you should buy it from the new money. B'di'evet it is good. So we're back to the original question. What is the original question? Very simple. A par v'sor sheyom haKippurim that were lost, and you refound them, and you bought a replacement, right? You bought a replacement because it was lost, and then you found the par v'sor, the original par v'sor. Now, so the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda says you kill them. You can't save them for next year. So the question is, why can't I save it for next year? Why not? Why kill those par v'sors? Use them for the following year. Rabbi says, because again, one of the years was chosen because of a lottery, and that lottery was done in the previous Yom Kippur. So you can't not reuse that goat for next year because you need a new goyrel for next year. So the Gemara says, okay, v'naisiv nigral, then make a new goyrel, for that goat. So the Gemara says, Gezerah Shemi Yomer, people will say, Hagoyverel Koveya Mishana Lechavarta. The Gezerah is that people will say that no, you don't even have to make a new goat. You don't have to make a new goyrel. People will say that one time you make a lottery is good and it works from the next year as well. We're afraid, in other words, that they're not going to make a new goyrel. Okay, fine. So that only takes care of why you killed the sa'ir. You don't want to use that sa'ir because people are going to say that last year's goyrel was good. You don't have to make a new goyrel. Fine. But I understand why the sa'ir you kill. Par my ikal meimer. Why are you going to kill that cow? So the Gemara says, Gezerah par otu sa'ir. I'm afraid that if you allow the par to stay alive, so maybe the sa'ir is going to stay alive. Maybe the sa'ir you're going to keep around. So the Gemara says, Mishum Gezerah yamusu. Because of the Gezerah, you're going to kill the par. Just kill the sa'ir and reuse the par. So Amru. So one more shot at this teretz, and then we'll stop. Amru Rabbanan Kamei Abaya. So the rabbi said in front of Abaya, Gezerah. The whole reason why you kill the animal, you kill the cow. Let's say you're going to kill the cow, is because what happens and not reuse it. Let's say the Kohen Gadol dies during the year. So you're going to use this par for a new Kohen Gadol. It's a cow, a chatas that lost its owner. And a chatas that lost its owner, you're supposed to kill. That's what he says. Gezerah, we're afraid that maybe the Kohen Gadol will die, and you're going to reuse that par from last year, and that's now good because it's the chatas that the original owner died. Therefore, for sure, you have to kill the cow. So the Gemara says, Hatinach par. That makes sense. You kill the cow. But so'ir ma ikilamema. With the goat, what could you say? I mean, why are you killing the goat? Reuse the goat for next year. So the Gemara says, Gzeira so'ir atupar. We have a Gzeira, maybe the goat. If you let the goat live, you're going to let the par live. So the Gemara says, Umushum Gzeira, because of a Gzeira Yamusu, you're going to kill the Sa'ir. The whole par is a Gzeira. And so the Sa'ir is a Gzeira for a Gzeira. So therefore, why should you kill the goat? So we'll remain with the Kasha, and this is where we stop. And the whole Amid dealt with this strange thing. The strange case, again, is a par v'soyer shel Yom Kippurim, a par and a goat of Yom Kippur that got lost. And you v'hiprish achreim tachteim, and they had a substitute take its place. And then you found the original par v'soyer shel Yom Kippurim, kulan yamisu, you kill them. And the question is, why don't you save them for next year? Rabbi Yehuda holds that you could technically save things from year to year. Why do you kill them? And the Gemara doesn't have so far a satisfactory teretz for all this. Okay. We're creeping through Kachim over here, but we'll get through it, Mitzvah Shem.
Ishkoach.
Okay, good to knock everybody.
Good to know.
Shkoyach.